The photographic evidence assembled by Rachel would remain as permanent documentation of Helena Ashworth's remarkable presence in New England society across 7 decades, serving as proof that human possibilities might extend far beyond conventional biological limitations. However, Helena herself had vanished from the social contexts where she had maintained her presence for over a century, leaving behind only the photographic record of her extraordinary existence and the questions raised by her timeless appearance among generations of mortal contemporaries. Yet Rachel's investigation was far from concluded. 3 months after Helena's disappearance from Newport society, Rachel received an unexpected contact that would expand her understanding of the phenomenon from an isolated case to evidence of a much larger and more complex situation. The contact came from Professor David Morrison, a historian at Brown University, who had been researching his own family's genealogical records and had discovered what he believed to be connected to Rachel's documented case of Helena Ashworth. Professor Morrison explained that his research into his family's history had uncovered photographs and documents spanning back to the 1860s that appeared to show the same ageless woman appearing at various family gatherings across multiple generations. The woman, identified in family records by different names over the decades, displayed the same unchanging appearance and elegant bearing that characterized Helena Ashworth in Rachel's documented cases. According to Morrison's family archives, the woman had first appeared at a Morrison family wedding in 1863, identified as Miss Catherine Whitfield, a cousin visiting from Providence. She had attended family gatherings regularly for the next 20 years before disappearing suddenly in 1883. However, family photographs from 1901 showed the identical woman attending another Morrison wedding, now identified as Miss Sarah Hamilton, supposedly a friend of the bride from New York. The pattern had continued throughout the 20th century, with the same woman appearing at significant Morrison family events under different names and claimed family connections, always maintaining the same youthful appearance while the family members around her aged and passed away. Morrison's most recent photograph of the woman dated from 1972, where she appeared at his grandfather's funeral, identified in family records as Miss Victoria Sterling, described as an old family friend from Boston. Rachel's comparison of Morrison's photographs with her own documentation of Helena Ashworth revealed unmistakable similarities in facial structure, posture, and even clothing choices. While the woman used different names and claimed different family connections, the photographic evidence strongly suggested that Helena Ashworth and Morrison's mysterious family visitor were the same individual. This discovery prompted Rachel to expand her investigation beyond the Blackwood family archives. She began contacting historical societies, genealogical researchers, and private collectors throughout New England, seeking additional photographs and documents that might contain evidence of similar ageless individuals appearing across multiple decades. Her systematic search revealed a network of documentation that suggested Helena Ashworth's case was not unique, but part of a larger phenomenon involving multiple individuals with extraordinary longevity characteristics. Archives in Boston, Salem, Providence, and other New England cities contained photographs and records of individuals who appeared to maintain the same appearance across spans of 30, 40, or even 50 years. These individuals typically appeared in formal social photographs at weddings, anniversaries, and other significant family gatherings. They were usually identified as distant relatives or family friends, with claimed connections that provided plausible explanations for their presence at private family events. However, careful genealogical research consistently revealed that these claimed relationships were false, and that the individuals had no legitimate family connections to their hosts. Dr. Rodriguez's folklore research proved invaluable in identifying patterns among these ageless individuals. Her collection of legends and stories provided cultural context for understanding how such individuals might have maintained their presence in communities across multiple generations, while avoiding the suspicion that their unusual characteristics might otherwise attract. According to traditional folklore, individuals with extraordinary longevity were often described as possessing supernatural charm or influence that made people accept their presence without questioning inconsistencies in their backgrounds or behavior. These legendary figures were said to be welcome guests at social gatherings, with hosts feeling honored by their attendance despite being unable to clearly explain their relationships or connections. Rachel's expanded investigation revealed that the ageless individuals documented in New England photographs displayed behavior patterns that closely matched these folkloric descriptions. Family letters and social correspondence consistently described these individuals as charming, sophisticated guests whose presence enhanced social gatherings, even when hosts could not clearly recall how they had become acquainted or why they had extended invitations. The research team began developing theories about how individuals with extraordinary longevity might maintain their social positions across multiple generations. The evidence suggested that they possessed not only biological characteristics that prevented normal aging, but also psychological or social abilities that enabled them to integrate seamlessly into different family and community contexts over extended periods. Dr. Chen's biological analysis of the photographic evidence revealed consistent anomalies in the images containing ageless individuals. These anomalies suggested that their unusual longevity might involve biological processes that affected their interaction with physical systems, including photographic equipment and chemical emulsions. The team hypothesized that individuals with extraordinary longevity might possess metabolic processes that operated at fundamentally different rates from normal human biology, potentially explaining both their resistance to aging and the subtle photographic anomalies observed in their documented appearances. However, the research also revealed that these individuals demonstrated sophisticated awareness of the potential dangers posed by scientific or official attention. Historical records showed consistent patterns of disappearance whenever ageless individuals attracted too much scrutiny from researchers, authorities, or other outsiders who might pose threats to their anonymity. Rachel's investigation had apparently triggered such a response, with Helena Ashworth and potentially other documented individuals altering their established patterns of social interaction to avoid continued documentation. The research team realized that their academic interest might be perceived as threatening by individuals who had successfully maintained their privacy for decades or centuries. This recognition led Rachel to develop new protocols for investigating extraordinary human phenomena that balanced scientific inquiry with respect for individual autonomy and privacy. The protocols emphasized passive documentation of existing evidence rather than active pursuit of individuals who might possess unusual characteristics. The team's continued analysis of historical photographs revealed additional evidence that ageless individuals might represent a distinct population rather than isolated anomalies. Patterns in their appearances, clothing choices, and social behaviors suggested coordinated activities that might indicate communication or organization among individuals with similar characteristics. Several photographs from different time periods and locations showed multiple ageless individuals appearing together at the same social events, suggesting that they maintained relationships with each other while integrating into normal human communities. These group appearances provided evidence that extraordinary longevity might involve social as well as biological phenomena. Dr. Rodriguez's research into folklore and legends revealed stories describing gatherings of ageless individuals who would meet periodically to share information and coordinate their activities within human communities. These stories, found in various cultural traditions, suggested that such individuals might maintain their own social structures parallel to normal human society. The implications of these discoveries extended beyond academic interest in unusual human phenomena. The evidence suggested that a population of ageless individuals had been living among normal humans for centuries, maintaining their own social networks while carefully managing their visibility to avoid detection or persecution. Rachel's documentation had provided unprecedented scientific evidence for the existence of such a population, but it had also potentially disrupted systems that had protected their anonymity for centuries. The ethical implications of continuing research needed to be carefully considered in light of the potential consequences for individuals who had demonstrated both extraordinary characteristics and clear preferences for privacy. The research team's final comprehensive report documented the extensive photographic evidence for ageless individuals in New England, while establishing protocols for future research that prioritized the welfare and autonomy of such individuals. The report acknowledged that some forms of human variation might require special consideration regarding privacy and research ethics. Helena Ashworth's case had served as the initial evidence for a phenomenon that appeared to involve multiple individuals across extensive geographical and temporal ranges. Her disappearance from documented social contexts had illustrated the sophisticated methods such individuals used to maintain their anonymity when faced with potential exposure. The photographic record assembled by Rachel's investigation provided permanent documentation of extraordinary human longevity, while also demonstrating the challenges involved in studying individuals who possessed both unusual characteristics and strong motivations for avoiding scientific scrutiny. The balance between research interests and respect for individual autonomy became a central consideration in approaches to investigating phenomena that exceeded normal human experience. The mystery of ageless individuals in New England society had been documented but not fully explained, providing evidence for biological possibilities that challenged conventional understanding while also illustrating the complex social systems such individuals had developed to maintain their privacy and security over extended periods. Rachel's work had established that human biology might involve possibilities far beyond current scientific frameworks, and that individuals with extraordinary characteristics might represent variations in human potential that had been successfully concealed from mainstream scientific attention for centuries. However, the investigation had also demonstrated that such individuals possessed sophisticated methods for protecting their anonymity, and that research efforts needed to respect their apparent preferences for privacy. The wedding photograph from 1914 that had initiated Rachel's investigation remained as the first documented evidence of Helena Ashworth's presence in a 70-year span of social appearances. However, the photograph had also become part of a much larger body of evidence, suggesting that extraordinary human longevity might involve a distinct population rather than isolated individual anomalies. The broader implications of Rachel's discoveries extended to fundamental questions about human biological potential and the possible existence of human variations that had remained hidden from scientific study. The evidence suggested that assumptions about the limits of human longevity and aging might need revision in light of documented cases that exceeded conventional biological frameworks. Helena Ashworth and the other ageless individuals documented through Rachel's research had maintained their presence in human society for centuries, while successfully avoiding the scientific attention that might have revealed the mechanisms underlying their extraordinary characteristics. Their success in maintaining anonymity suggested sophisticated understanding of human social systems and careful coordination of activities designed to prevent exposure. The photographic evidence would remain as permanent documentation of these remarkable individuals and their centuries-long presence among normal human populations. However, the individuals themselves had demonstrated their ability to disappear from documented contexts when faced with potential exposure, ensuring that their biological and social characteristics would remain mysterious despite extensive scientific interest. Rachel's investigation had provided unprecedented evidence for extraordinary human phenomena, while also illustrating the complex ethical considerations involved in studying individuals who possessed unusual characteristics and strong preferences for privacy. The case had established important precedents for balancing scientific curiosity with respect for individual autonomy when investigating phenomena that exceeded normal human experience. The ageless individuals of New England had left behind a photographic legacy that documented their remarkable presence across multiple generations, while also demonstrating their sophisticated methods for maintaining anonymity in the face of potential scientific scrutiny. Their story remained a testament to the possible extent of human biological variation and the complex social systems that might be required to protect extraordinary individuals from exposure or persecution. The mystery continued, with documented evidence of impossible longevity balanced against the apparent ability of such individuals to vanish when their extraordinary nature attracted too much attention. Rachel's work had revealed the existence of phenomena that challenged fundamental assumptions about human biology and mortality, while also demonstrating that some aspects of human variation might remain forever beyond the reach of conventional scientific investigation. However, Rachel's investigation was about to take an even more disturbing turn. 6 months after documenting the network of ageless individuals throughout New England, she received a package with no return address containing photographs and documents that would reveal the true scope and sinister implications of what she had uncovered. The materials had been sent anonymously, accompanied only by a brief note that read, "You need to understand what you're really dealing with. They've been watching you since you started asking questions." The photographs in the anonymous package showed Helena Ashworth and other ageless individuals in contexts that Rachel had never encountered during her research. Unlike the formal social gatherings where she had previously documented their appearances, these images showed them in what appeared to be private meetings held in locations that seemed deliberately chosen for their isolation and secrecy. One photograph, apparently taken with a telephoto lens from a considerable distance, showed Helena and 4 other ageless individuals gathered around a table in what appeared to be an abandoned mansion. The image quality was poor due to the covert nature of the photography, but the figures were clearly recognizable from Rachel's previous documentation. Most disturbing was the apparent presence of additional photographs spread across the table where they sat, suggesting that they were reviewing surveillance materials of their own. Another photograph showed a much larger gathering with at least 20 individuals who appeared to share the same ageless characteristics as Helena. They were assembled in what looked like a vast underground chamber, their faces illuminated by candlelight, that created an atmosphere more reminiscent of a secret ritual than a social gathering. The architectural details visible in the background suggested the location was far older than any of the social venues where Rachel had previously documented these individuals. The documents included with the anonymous photographs were even more unsettling than the images themselves. They appeared to be copies of handwritten records dating back to the 1700s, written in various hands but maintaining consistent formatting that suggested they were part of an organized record-keeping system. The documents described what appeared to be a systematic program of surveillance and infiltration of human communities by the ageless individuals Rachel had been studying. According to these historical records, the ageless individuals operated according to a coordinated plan that involved embedding themselves within prominent families and social circles to monitor and influence human activities across generations. Each individual was assigned to specific families or communities, with detailed instructions about maintaining their cover identities and gathering information about human social, economic, and political developments. Most chilling were the records that suggested the ageless individuals had been systematically documenting human genetic lineages, tracking the hereditary characteristics of families across multiple generations for purposes that were not clearly explained in the available documents. The records contained detailed genealogical charts that included not only birth and death dates, but also notations about physical and mental characteristics, suggesting a level of biological interest that far exceeded casual social observation. The anonymous documents also included what appeared to be correspondence between different ageless individuals, discussing their assignments and sharing information about significant developments in their assigned communities. These letters revealed a level of organization and communication that suggested the individuals Rachel had been studying were part of a much larger network with purposes that extended far beyond simple social integration. One letter, dated 1923, discussed the need to accelerate the timeline due to unexpected developments in human technological advancement. The writer expressed concern that human progress was proceeding faster than their organization had anticipated and suggested that more direct intervention might be necessary to maintain control over significant developments. Another letter from 1945 contained references to the project's success beyond our expectations and mentioned that human conflicts have provided ideal conditions for our data collection. The correspondence suggested that the ageless individuals had not been passive observers of human history, but had been actively involved in influencing events to serve their organization's purposes. Rachel found herself confronting evidence that the ageless individuals she had been studying were not simply biological anomalies who had found ways to integrate into human society, but rather representatives of an organized entity that had been systematically monitoring and manipulating human development for centuries. The implications were staggering and deeply disturbing. The anonymous materials also included more recent documents that suggested the surveillance program was ongoing and had adapted to contemporary technological capabilities. Computer printouts dated within the past decade contained detailed profiles of individual human subjects, including genetic information, psychological assessments, and predictions about future behavior patterns. Most unsettling was evidence that Rachel herself had become a subject of investigation by the Ageless Individuals organization. The documents included photographs of her taken without her knowledge during her research activities, along with detailed assessments of her investigative methods and potential threat to their operations. The materials suggested that her academic work had attracted their attention from its earliest stages. The anonymous sender had apparently been someone with access to the organization's internal documents, but who disagreed with their activities enough to risk exposure by revealing their existence to Rachel. However, the materials provided no indication of the sender's identity or motivations, leaving Rachel to wonder whether the revelation represented genuine whistleblowing or some form of calculated misdirection. Rachel realized that her investigation had evolved from academic research into potential personal danger. The evidence suggested that she had unknowingly been studying an organized entity with centuries of experience in maintaining secrecy and eliminating threats to their operations. The disappearance of Helena and other ageless individuals from their established social contexts now took on a more ominous significance. The documents revealed that the organization possessed detailed knowledge of human governmental and institutional structures, suggesting that they had developed methods for influencing official responses to potential exposure. Rachel began to understand that her research might have attracted attention not only from the ageless individuals themselves, but from human authorities who might be cooperating with their objectives. Most disturbing were references in the anonymous documents to harvest protocols and collection procedures that suggested the organization's interest in human subjects extended beyond observation and influence to more direct forms of exploitation. The documents provided no clear explanation of what these procedures involved, but the language suggested activities that posed genuine threats to human welfare. Rachel faced a dilemma about how to proceed with information that suggested she was dealing with an organized threat to human autonomy and safety, but which also placed her in personal danger by virtue of her knowledge. The anonymous materials had provided crucial evidence about the true nature of the ageless individuals, but they had also revealed that her investigation had attracted hostile attention from entities with centuries of experience in eliminating threats. She decided to seek assistance from Dr. Rodriguez and other colleagues who had been involved in her research, hoping that collaborative analysis might reveal strategies for protecting both themselves and the broader human community from what appeared to be an ongoing program of exploitation and control. However, she also recognized that expanding knowledge of the organization's existence might increase the danger to everyone involved. Dr. Rodriguez's analysis of the anonymous documents revealed additional disturbing patterns that suggested the ageless individuals organization had been systematically influencing human cultural and social development for centuries. Historical events that appeared to be natural human development showed signs of coordination that suggested artificial manipulation by external forces. The folklore traditions that Dr. Rodriguez had been studying took on new significance when viewed as potential evidence of humanity's historical awareness of organized non-human influence. Stories about supernatural beings who appeared at crucial moments in human history might represent cultural memories of encounters with the Ageless Individuals organization. Dr. Chen's biological expertise provided additional context for understanding how the organization might maintain its influence over extended periods. The apparent resistance to aging displayed by the individuals Rachel had documented might represent biological modifications that enabled extended operational lifespans for surveillance and infiltration activities. The collaborative analysis revealed that the organization appeared to possess technological capabilities that exceeded normal human development, suggesting they might represent either an advanced human subspecies or entities of non-human origin. The systematic nature of their activities and their apparent objectives suggested purposes that transcended individual survival or social integration. Rachel's team realized that they were dealing with a threat that required response beyond academic investigation. The evidence suggested that human autonomy and development had been subject to external manipulation for centuries, with implications that extended to every aspect of human civilization and progress. However, the team also recognized that their knowledge placed them in extreme danger from entities with centuries of experience in maintaining secrecy and eliminating threats. The disappearance of the ageless individuals from their established social contexts suggested that the organization was aware of Rachel's investigation and was taking measures to protect their operations. The anonymous materials had provided crucial evidence about the organization's existence and activities, but they had also revealed that Rachel and her colleagues were now targets of surveillance and potential elimination by entities with sophisticated capabilities for eliminating threats to their security. Rachel's final decision was to document and secure all evidence related to the organization's activities while taking measures to protect herself and her colleagues from retaliation. The investigation had revealed a threat to human autonomy that demanded response, but it had also demonstrated that such response required extreme caution and careful planning. The photographic evidence that had initiated Rachel's investigation remained as documentation of the organization's century-long infiltration of human society, but it had also become evidence of a much larger and more sinister program of surveillance and control that challenged fundamental assumptions about human autonomy and historical development. Helena Ashworth's appearances at social gatherings across 7 decades had not been the actions of an isolated, anomalous individual seeking social integration, but rather the systematic activities of an operative working for an organization with objectives that posed fundamental threats to human freedom and development. The wedding photograph from 1914 that had first captured Rachel's attention now served as evidence of the organization's long-term presence in human society and their sophisticated methods for maintaining surveillance while avoiding detection. The image documented not a biological curiosity, but evidence of organized infiltration that had been ongoing for centuries. Rachel's investigation had uncovered evidence of phenomena that challenged not only scientific understanding of human biology, but also fundamental assumptions about human historical autonomy and cultural development. The ageless individuals represented not evolutionary variants, but operatives of an organization with purposes that remained unclear, but appeared to pose significant threats to human welfare and freedom. The mystery had evolved from academic curiosity about unusual longevity into evidence of organized threat to human civilization. Rachel's work had provided unprecedented documentation of this threat, while also revealing the sophisticated methods used to maintain secrecy and eliminate exposure across multiple centuries of operation. The implications extended far beyond individual cases of unusual biology to questions about the authenticity of human cultural and technological development and the extent to which human history had been subject to external manipulation and control. The photographic evidence remained as permanent documentation of this threat, while also serving as proof that some aspects of reality exceeded conventional scientific frameworks and posed challenges that required response beyond traditional academic investigation. Rachel's situation became increasingly precarious when she discovered that her colleagues at the National Archives were beginning to question the nature of her research and the resources she was devoting to what they perceived as an eccentric investigation into photographic anomalies. Her department head, Dr. Patricia Fleming, called Rachel into her office to express concerns about the direction of her work and its potential impact on the institution's reputation. Dr. Fleming had apparently received inquiries from external sources about Rachel's research activities, though she declined to specify who had made these inquiries or what concerns they had expressed. The conversation left Rachel with the unsettling realization that the organization she had been investigating possessed the capability to influence her professional environment and potentially terminate her access to the resources necessary for continuing her work. More disturbing were subtle changes Rachel began to notice in her daily routine and environment. Mail that she had been expecting failed to arrive, phone calls were interrupted by unexplained technical difficulties, and she began to observe individuals who appeared to be monitoring her activities from discrete distances. These observations might have been attributed to paranoia brought on by the stress of her investigation, but their consistency and systematic nature suggested deliberate surveillance. Rachel decided to take precautions to protect her research materials and findings from potential seizure or destruction. She created multiple copies of all photographic evidence and documents, storing them in various locations and with trusted individuals who were not connected to her official research activities. She also began communicating with her research collaborators through secure channels to minimize the risk of interception. Dr. Rodriguez contacted Rachel through encrypted communication to report that she had been experiencing similar surveillance and interference with her academic activities. Her office at Yale had been broken into, though nothing appeared to be stolen, and she had noticed individuals who seemed to be observing her campus movements with unusual persistence. Dr. Chen reported comparable experiences, including computer security breaches that appeared to be specifically targeted at her research files related to the biological analysis of the ageless individuals. The systematic nature of the interference across multiple institutions suggested a coordinated campaign to disrupt their collaborative investigation. The research team realized that their work had attracted attention from an organization with sophisticated capabilities for surveillance and disruption of academic research. The ageless individuals they had been studying were apparently part of a network with resources and influence that extended into human institutional structures. Rachel's analysis of the anonymous documents revealed additional disturbing information about the organization's methods for maintaining secrecy and eliminating threats. Historical records suggested that researchers, journalists, and government officials who had discovered evidence of the organization's activities had frequently experienced professional destruction, personal tragedies, or mysterious disappearances. The documents included case studies of individuals who had encountered the ageless individuals or discovered evidence of their activities over the past century. These cases followed consistent patterns: initial curiosity or investigation, followed by escalating interference with the individual's professional and personal life, and ultimately either complete withdrawal from their research or disappearance from public record. One particularly detailed case file described a journalist from the 1950s who had been investigating reports of ageless individuals in various New England communities. His initial articles had attracted significant public interest, but subsequent pieces had been rejected by publishers. His sources had stopped cooperating with his investigation, and he had eventually abandoned journalism entirely to work in an unrelated field. The file included surveillance reports documenting the systematic destruction of his career and social relationships. Another case involved a police detective from the 1930s who had noticed patterns in missing persons cases that suggested the involvement of individuals who appeared in multiple decades of police photographs without showing signs of aging. His investigation had been shut down by his superiors. He had been transferred to a different department, and he had died in what was officially ruled an accidental drowning less than a year later. These historical cases provided context for understanding the current interference with Rachel's research and suggested that the organization possessed well-developed procedures for eliminating threats to their security. The patterns also indicated that the organization had been operating with knowledge and possibly cooperation from elements within human, governmental, and institutional structures. Rachel faced the realization that her investigation had placed her in a situation where continuing her research might result in professional destruction or personal harm, but where abandoning the investigation might leave an ongoing threat to human autonomy undocumented and unaddressed. The ethical implications were complex and troubling. The anonymous materials had also included information about locations where the organization conducted its more sensitive activities. Several addresses in remote areas of New England were identified as facilities used for activities described only as processing and evaluation of human subjects. The documents provided no clear explanation of what these activities involved, but the language suggested processes that pose serious threats to the individuals subjected to them. Rachel realized that documenting the organization's surveillance and infiltration activities might not be sufficient to address the threat they represented. The evidence suggested that human individuals were being subjected to exploitation or harm at the identified facilities, and that response might require intervention beyond academic documentation. However, the organization's demonstrated capabilities for surveillance and retaliation made direct investigation of these facilities extremely dangerous. Rachel and her colleagues lacked the resources and expertise necessary for conducting covert operations against an entity with centuries of experience in maintaining security and eliminating threats. The research team decided to focus on creating a comprehensive documentary record of the organization's activities, while taking measures to ensure that this information would survive potential attempts to suppress it. They established multiple secure archives and developed protocols for releasing the information to appropriate authorities if their investigation was terminated through official or unofficial means. Dr. Rodriguez's folklore research provided additional context for understanding the organization's historical activities and their potential vulnerabilities. Traditional stories about supernatural beings often included accounts of methods for protecting against their influence or driving them away from human communities. While these folklore traditions might not provide literal solutions to contemporary threats, they suggested that human communities had developed strategies for dealing with similar entities in the past. The stories consistently emphasized the importance of community cooperation, careful documentation of supernatural activities, and the use of traditional protective practices that had been passed down through generations. Dr. Chen's biological analysis had identified measurable anomalies in photographs containing the ageless individuals, suggesting that their unusual characteristics might involve measurable physical phenomena. The team hypothesized that these phenomena might provide opportunities for detection or disruption of the organization's activities. The electromagnetic anomalies observed in photographs might represent biological signatures that could be detected using appropriate scanning equipment. If the ageless individuals generated measurable electromagnetic fields, it might be possible to identify their presence in human communities using technical means rather than relying on photographic documentation. However, developing such detection capabilities would require resources and expertise that exceeded what the research team could access through normal academic channels. The project would require collaboration with technical specialists and possibly governmental agencies that might themselves be compromised by the organization's influence. Rachel's investigation had reached a point where academic research needed to transition to active countermeasures against an ongoing threat to human welfare. The evidence she had assembled documented systematic surveillance and manipulation of human communities by an organized entity with sophisticated capabilities for maintaining secrecy and eliminating opposition. The photographic record that had initiated her investigation remained as crucial evidence of the organization's activities, but it had also become part of a larger body of documentation that revealed the scope and persistence of threats to human autonomy that had been operating for centuries without detection or resistance. Helena Ashworth's appearances at social gatherings across 7 decades had represented one element of a vast surveillance program that had been monitoring and influencing human development for far longer than anyone had realized. Her story had served as a window into activities that challenged fundamental assumptions about human historical autonomy and cultural development. The wedding photograph from 1914 that had captured Rachel's initial attention had become evidence of an organized threat that transcended individual biological anomalies and represented systematic exploitation of human communities by entities with purposes and capabilities that remained largely mysterious but appeared to pose significant dangers to human welfare. Rachel's work had evolved from academic curiosity about unusual longevity into documentation of organized activities that threatened human autonomy and demanded response beyond traditional research methodologies. The investigation had revealed that some historical mysteries represented ongoing threats rather than resolved phenomena, and that academic investigation sometimes required transition to active countermeasures. The ageless individuals documented in Rachel's research had not been isolated biological anomalies seeking social integration, but rather operatives of an organization that had been systematically exploiting human communities for centuries while maintaining sophisticated methods for avoiding detection and eliminating threats to their security. The implications for human civilization were profound and disturbing. If Rachel's findings were accurate, then human historical development had been subject to external manipulation and control for far longer than anyone had realized, with consequences that extended to every aspect of contemporary society and culture. The research had provided unprecedented documentation of these threats, while also revealing the sophisticated methods used to maintain secrecy and eliminate exposure across multiple centuries of operation. The evidence suggested that traditional academic and governmental responses might be inadequate for addressing threats that had been developing countermeasures for centuries. Rachel's final preparations involved creating secure archives of all evidence related to the organization's activities, while establishing protocols for continuing the investigation if she or her immediate collaborators were unable to proceed. The work had demonstrated that some threats to human welfare required response that transcended normal institutional boundaries and demanded innovative approaches to documentation and countermeasures. The mystery that had begun with a simple photographic anomaly had revealed evidence of systematic threats to human autonomy that demanded response far beyond academic documentation. Rachel's investigation had provided crucial evidence about these threats, while also demonstrating the sophisticated methods used to maintain secrecy and eliminate opposition across multiple generations of operation. The wedding guests who had posed with Helena in 1914 had unknowingly participated in documenting one element of a vast program of surveillance and control that had been operating within human society for centuries. Their image had become part of a historical record that revealed the true scope of threats that had been hidden from human awareness through sophisticated methods of concealment and misdirection. Rachel's work had succeeded in documenting these threats and creating permanent records that could survive attempts at suppression, but it had also revealed that addressing such threats required capabilities and resources that exceeded what traditional academic research could provide. The investigation had demonstrated that some mysteries represented ongoing dangers rather than historical curiosities, and that academic work sometimes needed to transition to active resistance against forces that threatened human welfare and autonomy. The photographic evidence would remain as permanent documentation of the organization's century-long infiltration of human society, serving as proof that threats to human freedom and development could operate for extended periods without detection while maintaining sophisticated methods for eliminating exposure and opposition. The images had become more than historical artifacts. They were evidence of ongoing activities that demanded response from contemporary human institutions and communities. Helena Ashworth's timeless appearance in photographs spanning 7 decades had represented not biological curiosity, but systematic surveillance activity that was part of a larger program of monitoring and control that posed fundamental threats to human autonomy and development. Her story had served as evidence of organized activities that challenged assumptions about human historical independence and revealed the existence of threats that had been operating within human society for far longer than anyone had realized. The situation reached a critical point when Rachel received another anonymous communication, this time delivered directly to her apartment through means she could not explain. She had returned home from the archives to find an envelope that had been slipped under her door while she was away, despite the building's security measures that should have prevented unauthorized access to the residential floors. The envelope contained a single photograph that sent a chill through Rachel's entire being. The image showed her sitting at her desk in the National Archives, taken from an angle that could only have been captured by someone standing directly behind her while she worked. The photograph had been taken recently, within the past few days, based on the clothing she remembered wearing and the documents visible on her desk. What made the photograph truly terrifying was not just the evidence that she was being watched during her most private research moments, but the figure that appeared in the background of the image. Standing in the shadows behind the archival stacks, barely visible but unmistakably present, was Helena Ashworth. Her face was turned toward Rachel's desk, and even in the dim lighting of the archives, her expression appeared to be one of cold, calculating interest. The implications were staggering. Helena had not simply disappeared from Newport society as Rachel had assumed, but had instead relocated her surveillance activities to focus directly on Rachel herself. The ageless woman who had attended social gatherings for 70 years was now personally monitoring the researcher who had uncovered evidence of her organization's activities. Rachel realized that her investigation had crossed a threshold that had triggered direct intervention by the organization she had been studying. The anonymous materials that had revealed the organization's existence had apparently been intended to frighten her into abandoning her research, but her continued investigation had prompted more aggressive measures. The photograph had been accompanied by a brief note written in elegant handwriting that seemed to belong to an earlier era. "Your curiosity has been noted and evaluated. There are consequences for those who persist in examining matters that do not concern them. Consider this a courtesy warning that will not be repeated." Rachel understood that she was now dealing with a direct threat from entities that had demonstrated their capability to eliminate problems to their security. The organization that had operated in secrecy for centuries was apparently prepared to take action to protect their activities from exposure. However, the threat also confirmed that Rachel's investigation had been successful in uncovering information that the organization considered genuinely dangerous to their operations. The escalation from passive surveillance to direct intimidation suggested that her research had identified vulnerabilities or exposed activities that required immediate containment. Rachel contacted Dr. Rodriguez and Dr. Chen through secure communication channels to inform them of the escalation and coordinate their response. Both colleagues reported receiving similar threatening communications, along with evidence that they were now under direct surveillance by the ageless individuals they had been studying. Dr. Rodriguez had discovered one of the ageless individuals from her folklore research sitting in the back of her lecture hall during a class on supernatural legends. The individual had made no attempt to conceal their presence, apparently intending their visibility as a form of psychological pressure designed to remind Dr. Rodriguez that her activities were being monitored. Dr. Chen had found her laboratory equipment tampered with in ways that caused no actual damage, but demonstrated that the organization could access even secure research facilities whenever they chose. The message was clear: no location was beyond their reach, and their restraint in causing harm was a matter of choice rather than inability. The research team realized that they had moved beyond academic investigation into an active conflict with an organization that possessed sophisticated capabilities for surveillance, infiltration, and intimidation. The situation required strategies that exceeded traditional academic approaches to research and documentation. Rachel made the difficult decision to leave her position at the National Archives and go into hiding while continuing her investigation through unofficial channels. The organization's demonstrated ability to influence institutional structures made her official research position a liability that could be exploited to terminate her work. She established a secure communication network with supporters who could assist her investigation, while maintaining their own safety through careful operational security. The network included academics, journalists, and private researchers who had encountered evidence of similar phenomena, but had previously lacked the comprehensive documentation that Rachel's work had provided. The collaborative effort revealed that Rachel's investigation was not unique, but part of a broader pattern of individuals worldwide who had encountered evidence of organized surveillance and manipulation by entities with extraordinary longevity characteristics. Similar reports were emerging from researchers in Europe, Asia, and other regions, suggesting that the phenomenon extended far beyond New England. However, the international scope of the organization also meant that its capabilities for suppressing exposure and eliminating threats were correspondingly extensive. Researchers who had discovered evidence of the organization's activities reported experiencing systematic harassment and intimidation across multiple countries and jurisdictions. Dr. Martinez, a historian from Barcelona who had documented similar ageless individuals in Spanish archives, reported that her research had been terminated by university authorities following pressure from unspecified external sources. Her access to historical collections had been revoked, and she had been advised to pursue different research topics for her own safety. Professor Takahashi from Tokyo had encountered ageless individuals in Japanese family photographs spanning back to the Meiji period. His investigation had revealed patterns of surveillance and influence that closely matched Rachel's findings, but his research had been disrupted by a series of personal and professional crises that appeared to be artificially generated to destroy his credibility and resources. The international network of researchers began to develop a comprehensive picture of an organization that had been operating globally for centuries, maintaining surveillance and influence over human communities through embedded operatives who appeared to possess extraordinary longevity characteristics. The evidence suggested that the organization's activities were coordinated on a planetary scale, with operatives assigned to monitor and influence human development in different regions, according to an overarching plan that remained mysterious, but appeared to involve systematic collection of information about human biological and cultural evolution. Rachel's photographic documentation had provided crucial evidence for understanding the organization's methods and persistence, but it had also revealed that individual researchers lacked the resources and capabilities necessary for effectively investigating or opposing an entity with centuries of experience in maintaining secrecy and eliminating threats. The International Research Network began developing strategies for collective documentation and mutual protection that could survive attempts at suppression by an organization with sophisticated capabilities for identifying and eliminating individual researchers. The approach required unprecedented cooperation between individuals who had never met in person and who communicated only through heavily encrypted channels. The network's analysis revealed that the organization's greatest vulnerability might be its dependence on secrecy for maintaining its operations. Despite their sophisticated methods for suppressing individual researchers, the organization appeared to lack effective strategies for dealing with coordinated exposure by multiple sources simultaneously. Rachel's role evolved from individual researcher to coordinator of a global effort to document and expose the organization's activities while protecting the researchers involved from retaliation. The project required skills and resources that exceeded traditional academic capabilities and demanded innovative approaches to collaboration and security. The photographic evidence that had initiated Rachel's investigation became part of a larger archive that documented the organization's global activities across multiple centuries and continents. The images provided visual proof of systematic surveillance and infiltration that had affected human communities worldwide. Helena Ashworth's appearances in New England social gatherings had represented one small element of a vast network of surveillance that had been monitoring human development on a global scale. Her story had served as a window into activities that challenged fundamental assumptions about human autonomy and revealed the existence of organized threats that had been operating within human society for far longer than anyone had realized. The 1914 wedding photograph that had captured Rachel's initial attention had become evidence of systematic activities that threatened human freedom and development on a planetary scale. The image documented not an isolated biological anomaly, but one element of organized surveillance that had been operating within human communities for centuries. Rachel's investigation had evolved from academic curiosity about photographic anomalies into coordination of a global resistance effort against organized threats to human autonomy. The work had demonstrated that some mysteries represented ongoing dangers rather than historical curiosities, and that addressing such dangers required collaborative efforts that transcended traditional academic and institutional boundaries. The research network continued to expand as more individuals encountered evidence of the organization's activities and sought connection with others who had made similar discoveries. The collective effort provided protection through shared resources and mutual support, while creating documentation that could survive attempts at suppression. However, the organization's response to the growing exposure was also escalating. Reports began arriving of researchers experiencing more severe forms of harassment and intimidation, suggesting that the organization was prepared to take increasingly aggressive measures to protect its security. The conflict between researchers seeking to document the organization's activities and the organization's efforts to maintain secrecy had evolved into a global struggle with implications that extended far beyond academic investigation. The outcome would determine whether systematic threats to human autonomy could be exposed and addressed, or whether they would continue to operate in secrecy. Rachel realized that her investigation of a simple photographic anomaly had uncovered evidence of organized activities that posed fundamental challenges to human freedom and development. The work had demonstrated that some aspects of reality exceeded conventional understanding and demanded responses that transcended traditional approaches to research and documentation. The wedding guests who had posed with Helena in 1914 had unknowingly participated in documenting activities that were part of a global program of surveillance and control that had been operating within human society for centuries. Their image had become part of a historical record that revealed the true scope of organized threats to human autonomy and freedom. The ageless individuals documented in photographs worldwide had not been isolated biological anomalies, but rather operatives of an organization that had been systematically monitoring and influencing human development for purposes that remained largely mysterious but appeared to pose significant threats to human welfare and independence. Rachel's work had succeeded in creating documentation that could survive attempts at suppression, while also establishing networks of researchers who could continue investigating and exposing the organization's activities despite sophisticated efforts to maintain secrecy and eliminate opposition. The mystery that had begun with Helena Ashworth's unchanging appearance across 7 decades had revealed evidence of systematic threats to human autonomy that demanded ongoing vigilance and resistance from individuals committed to preserving human freedom and independence from organized manipulation and control. The photographic evidence would remain as permanent documentation of these threats, while also serving as proof that individual curiosity and collaborative investigation could reveal hidden dangers that posed fundamental challenges to human civilization and development. Helena's story had become a symbol of the sophisticated methods used by organized entities to maintain surveillance and influence over human communities, while avoiding detection through careful management of their visibility and activities. The investigation had demonstrated that some historical mysteries represented ongoing threats rather than resolved phenomena, and that academic work sometimes required transition to active resistance against forces that operated beyond traditional institutional capabilities and demanded innovative approaches to detection and opposition.